Good morning. It's 7:59. But you all sound like you're ready. You're all quiet. There's a hush comes over the audience. My name's Barbara Bynum, and I'm one of the forum moderators. There are 4 of us who have been putting together a program. It is hard to believe sometimes when I look back, for over 10 years on every Wednesday morning. So thanks to my compatriots, Kathy Hebers, Phoebe Benzinger, who is on vacation, well-deserved, and Judy Ann Files, who couldn't be here this morning. Today's topic it's one of those citizen-driven requests. So when we ask, hey, what do you guys want to hear more about? Code enforcement came up, and that was for both the city and the county. And so I'm excited to introduce this topic today. We are joined by both the city's code enforcement officer, Kevin Walters, and the county's code enforcement officer, Rick Gawlinski. They go back, they've known each other a really long time, they used to work together. I asked them to introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about their background before they begin. They're each going to speak, and then there'll probably be lots of time for questions, because both have admitted they are reluctant public speakers. So let's smile at them a lot, give them good feedback, because they both kind of said, I'll be there. And Kevin's got, his boss's boss, the mayor, all in the room watching his presentation. So he admitted he's already a little nervous off the bat. So let's give them both a warm welcome, and we'll start with Rick from the county. Exactly, perfect. Remember, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So Kevin Walters and I think he was a corporal back in '93 when I started with Montrose PD. So I was with the city of Montrose.
What's your bike up?
Sorry, I was with City of Montrose 26 years. Been with the county coming up on 4 years, so approaching 30 total. My first 12 or so years at the police department, I was a patrolman, and I've been doing code enforcement ever since. I'm going to go over some mainly the county stuff that we do. Any of these things, this after 50 is a pain, kind of. A lot of things we deal with, code enforcement in the county and city. There could be, pages or whatnot of ordinances, but we don't necessarily deal with all of them. I find myself doing a lot of triage on calls to give people an answer, because it may not be something I can help them with as far as ordinance goes, but I can get them in the right direction to get them further help. So I'm going to go over mainly the patrol division first. I assist on just regular VIN verifications. That could be at the office or away from the office. It could be 10, 15 miles away from the office. Certified VINs, those are mostly as needed. I'm kind of the secondary on those. Certifieds are quite a bit different from a regular VIN. Instead of $10 or $50. And those are, good example is a rebuild from salvage vehicles and that kind of thing. And there's 2 of us that are certified to do those in the department. Hopefully someday the Montrose PD will have some of those guys too, certified. I deal with the abandoned vehicles on occasion out there off the public roadways. Illegal dumping, that's always been an issue. We get more of those out on public and BLM lands than we do our public right-of-ways. So I work closely with BLM and our road and bridge department to get those issues cleaned up. Civil process. We lost our civil process server about a year and a half ago. And position, and that keeps me really busy, I can tell you that. That's like a small claims court, divorce, see a lot of evictions. That's like a weekly thing, I mean, more people get evicted.
So Rick, when someone gets evicted, do you show up? You're the person from the county that,
It's like a 3-4 part process. Yeah, the final move-out date is called a writ of restitution, and that's usually where our one or more deputies show up. Sometimes they have to escort them off the property, as otherwise they're trespassing. I do help on some of those if everything's going smooth. Otherwise, I'm not involved in those typically. But like the initial door postings and stuff to get people evicted, those are a weekly occurrence around here. Oh yeah, and the radar trailer, we've got 2 of those now, one here and then one on the west end. Those are more of a PR type thing. About 3 weeks ago or so, ours got vandalized out on Chiquita. Just got the part in yesterday, so we'll get that fixed soon. I don't know why people have to tip over an $8,000 piece of property. It's beyond me. I don't know if anybody's familiar. Jim Austin with the health department. I got a list of quite a few things that the 2 of us deal with. Because sometimes you get a complaint on your phone or through an email, and everything kind of ties in with the other departments. Some things like that would be a failing septic system or a raw sewage odor. Those kind of go hand in hand, obviously. I spoke with Jim yesterday, and it sounds like next week is going to be talk about West Nile virus and mosquitoes. Sometimes Jim and I do site visits together, or I had one last week he wanted me to do, went out and did on my own and reported back to him that it was a potential hazmat issue, but it turned out not to be, so that was good. Chemical spills, those are handled at the state level. Animal carcass disposal, that's handled through CDPHE. I have info on that if anybody needs that later. Bird flu, that's handled through the Parks and Wildlife Division. Domestic birds, anything domestic related is handled at the state level. And wild birds is handled by the Department of Ag. Here's the one dealt with this in the past. Aerial spray applications, whether it be pesticides, herbicides, that's also handled through the state ag department. Tenant landlord disputes, PD and SO, we both get a lot of those type of calls, I know, but a resource Jim recently gave me is it's Oncopagi Volunteer Legal Aid on the landlord tenant dispute. I believe they're at 300 North Cascade, which is where Region 10 used to be, I think. You mentioned weeds. Yeah, that's one thing I don't mess with the city was, yeah, a lot of weeds out there. However, if you have questions about particularly the noxious weeds, list of A, B, and C type, you can get with contact Justin Musser out at the Ecological Services Department. That's out at the old Fairgrounds building, like just next door, new one, to the east there. Open burning, the city doesn't deal with that too much. I know we sure do.
when you say open burning, do you respond, do you go around looking for open burning, or do you get a complaint from someone and then go check out the open burning? Like, tell us more about how that would work.
Those are generally citizens calling in the dispatch for a deputy to go check out, type of thing. And another thing you can do is, if you want to do the open burning yourself, is get a hold of the fire department. You can talk to Lindsay Wiley out there, and I have her contact info too. Because technically, CDPHE's Air Pollution Control Division handles open burning. There's actually a permit required, believe it or not. And there's also at the local level, for, and if you reside in the city limits, there's also a kind of a one-page special permit that can get issued there at the fire station. And this would be the downtown fire station, to my knowledge, on South 5th Street there. Zoning issues, work closely with Talmadge Richmond, who's in here, the planning development director. We work mostly with people living in RVs. That's a big problem out there. And probably the second one would be illegal businesses. We've got those going weekly, it seems like. Generally, a notice and order is issued for the zoning resolution violation is issued for the RVs on that.
Are people allowed to live, tell us more about that, because we're seeing more and more people trying to live in an RV, and can they, you know, where can they park it, where can't they park it, and it sounds like that's your job maybe to be their first contact point, if they've got an RV parked on the side of the road in the county.
It's mainly the ones that are putting up their skirting and the tiki huts and the barbecue grills and everything, staying past the 90 days for the year. City, I think, still 30 days, last time I checked. But we have some that are trying to make it more of a permanent thing. Usually it's a neighbor calling in.
So what about people that are building a house and they have an RV, they're living in the RV there?
We'd have to check with Talmadge, but I believe they can apply for a permit that gives them up to 1 year while they're building the structure to legally reside in it.
So in Montrose County, there are a few different situations where you can live in an RV. One is with an active building permit. You can live in an RV for up to a year with an active building permit on site. What Rick's mentioning about the 90 days is you're allowed to have an RV for temporary occupancy 90 days out of the year for if family's visiting or if you're taking care of someone for a short period of time. You have 90 days out of the year. And then the third, obviously in an RV park would be allowed. And then the fourth is if you have property over 35 acres, so out in near the plateau or out near Mayor in the West End or close to town. If you have over 35 acres and you have an approved septic system, you can live in an RV on that property for 180 days out of the year. So there are a few different scenarios where you can live in an RV, but planning and development department's complaint driven, so we don't go around looking. We see them, but we've been instructed to go by complaint. So when we hear a complaint from a neighbor or from a resident, we follow up, and I work closely with Rick on following up on verifying if there is someone living there, when they started, when they're supposed to end, and then communicating that with the resident.
So it sounds like you do a lot of the legwork, but then is it Rick who has to go knock on the door?
Rick does the legwork.
Oh, you feel like Rick, okay.
Thanks, Tom. So recently, actually, these RVs and the zoning, the illegal business, Talmadge, myself, and Joe Gaffney, our legal advisor, we all work closely to help resolve these problems as they come. The rubbish junk ordinance, it originally came out in 2015. That's been under review several times. We're hopefully toward the tail end of getting it finalized, and approved. We just haven't heard any further from the commissioners on that one. Want to note that early spring of last year, we had some issues with the, I'll call them abandoned hemp fields. You know, the black plastic left everywhere. That's usually not an issue until it starts blowing into the right of way or to the neighbors' yards and whatnot. We had probably 3 or 4 of those, and I noticed this year it looks a lot better. They're finally getting farmed again with crop and stuff, so I hope that never comes to this area again, honestly. It was kind of a mess to deal with, so. And I think Barbara was gonna talk about our website.
Yeah, we were gonna show folks if they had questions, and maybe you can use the dog ordinance as a good example, because the county updated that just last year. But if folks want to kind of know about these rules at the county level, if you go to Montrose County's website, and then over here, if you put ordinances, and then you scroll down, it'll show you everywhere ordinances showed up. And this one is the one that's going to lead you to all of them. And so if you were curious, well, what does the county say about dog control? That's where you would be able to find those original copies. So do you want to talk a little bit about the dog one and what you do in terms of any of the dog ordinance?
I actually don't deal with
You
dog control.
don't?
Well,
There you go.
I was involved with the rewrite.
Okay.
Last go around.
So if in the county, who does deal with the dogs if there's a problem with a dog in the county?
Right now, it's the road deputies, but typically it's an animal control officer. We're looking for a new one actually right now. We have an opening. If you know anybody.
Okay.
But going back to the dog ordinance, if you go to that ordinance page,
Uh-huh.
go back one. You can look up the history, like if you go back to 1997, that's the original version. Yeah, right there. And I believe there's one in between around maybe 2015, 16. There's been several versions, yeah, so there's a 2016 version. But that's just one example. And then just because they're all these ordinances doesn't mean I necessarily deal with them on a day-to-day basis or even at all, so. But that's the best place to go to look over them in more detail and stuff.
Perfect. And if someone has a complaint on a neighbor, an RV or junk, what's the best way to report that to the county?
Typically myself or Talmadge,
Okay.
whether it be a phone call, email.
Okay, great. I think what we'll do is we'll hold off on more questions and let the city talk about code enforcement, and then we'll bring them both back up here and do some questions. So thank you so much. Okay, hand off the microphone.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Walters. Guess my bio. Grew up here in Montrose, graduated Montrose High School, won't go into what year. Started with the Montrose Police Department in 1983. Spent 20 years with the police department, left as a sergeant. Spent 2 years with Delta County Sheriff's Office, was assigned to the drug task force that worked the area, and then spent 6 years with the Montrose County Sheriff's Office. Got out of law enforcement, did some other things. In April of last year, saw an advertisement for code compliance officer. I was driving back and forth to Delta Sheriff's Office doing civil stuff. So I thought, that'd be interesting, and thought I might have a chance because the chief, I was his sergeant way back then. I have a few things that I could share, but anyway, so anyway, lucked out, got the job, knew nothing about code. Didn't have to worry about it when I was a cop. We did criminal stuff. So started again in April. And it's been a learning process for me. This year really has. That wet winter we had that we needed The weeds have gone nuts, all right? So, anyway, to go back, it was advertised as code compliance, not code enforcement. And so we got together when I started, and it was decided that the goal would be to work with people and get them into compliance. So just to give you a kind of outline how I work my issues, sorry. I either observe the violation on my own, if I get a chance, or I get complaints through emails, phone calls, and the A Better Montrose app, which I think we'll go into later. If I get complaints from the other ways, I go out to verify that, yeah, this is a violation of a code. I contact the resident or the property owner and it's, let them know what the violation is, what needs to be done to fix it. I give them a set amount of time, usually a week, unless it's, you know, I work with them if they need a little longer. I have a spreadsheet back at my office, and I have a due date. So each morning I find out all the ones that I have due dates that day. I go back, if work has been done and it's met the requirements, then the case is over. If not, I contact them, we figure out why it didn't get done, what they need, and we set another due date. It's not an overnight process if you're the complainant, unfortunately. I go back the second due date, if it's not done, then they're issued a written violation notice. That notice has what codes they violated, what needs to be done to fix it in a set amount of time, usually 7 days. It also describes that, hey, if you get this done, it's over. If you don't, you can get a summons. I go back, if it's done, good. If not, I issue a summons. In the year I've done this, I haven't issued a whole lot of summonses, thank goodness. Summons in the municipal court, realize that this is code, not criminal. So the judge can issue a fine if they're found guilty or plead guilty. The judge can also issue an abatement order. And I think since I've done this, we've had 3. That's when the city comes in, now we have to contract it. They've tried to hire a part-time position ever since I started, hasn't had a lot of luck. And they clean up whatever the issue is, and then the city asks for restitution through the courts from the property owner. So that's worst case scenario. I guess there was a question about our challenges that we have this year. Mine are weeds. Rick just talked about it as a city thing. Last month, month of May, I had 97 reports that dealt with weeds. It's crazy. Going back, if I've talked to that landowner last year or earlier this year, I don't worry about the verbal warnings. I just get a written notice right away. Next challenge is abandoned vehicles. To be legally parked on a city street, it must be operable, must have current registration, and it can't sit there for more than 30 days without being moved. If I see a vehicle, 2 flat tires. And it's obvious there's leaves that are piled up on the windshield wipers. You know, I try to find a registered owner. The ones without plates on them, it's a little tough. You can check the VIN. Try to contact them. If it doesn't work, I issue what's called a red tag. And that gives them 72 hours to move the vehicle over off the street or to fix the issues, the flat tires or the registration. If that doesn't happen 72 hours, then the vehicle is impounded. It usually goes to our tow company's lot, and they can get their vehicle back if they meet the requirements. Another big problem is signs.
Kevin, can you get the mic?
Oh, sorry. Then I'll blow your ears out. Anyway, so signs are another problem. Mostly yard sale signs. I don't know if you've noticed at intersections, but they pile up. The city code on signs is you can't be attached to public property. Stop signs, light poles, telephone poles. It also can't be placed in city right-of-way. I tell people the city has a GIS map that's fantastic, and I use it constantly before I remove a sign just to verify that it's in city right-of-way. One of the unique city right-of-ways are roundabouts. I don't know if you're a fan of a roundabout or not, but I've had several close calls in a roundabout. Why someone would put a sale sign in the middle of a roundabout to draw somebody's attention off of the roundabout. But that's city right of way, and I remove the signs and destroy the signs. A couple Saturdays ago, I filled my pickup full of signs, over 50 some signs. Wasn't real popular. I guess I don't do Facebook, but I guess there was some comments. So that's the city code. Another challenge is parking of RV trailers, campers, boats. People probably don't know the code, but you're only allowed to have that on the city street 5 days a month. Violation for that is a $200 ticket. Luckily, I haven't issued any tickets for that. Hopefully I didn't get in trouble with my bosses. But anyway, we designed a nice little flyer that I attached to the trailer, and it has the code on it and also has the fine. You know, 5 days, I tag it, let's say I tag it on a Monday. I figure they probably maybe took the camper out on the weekend, so I give them that leeway. And then I also, again, try to talk to them before it's time to write the ticket. So anyway, that's worked pretty well. And then there's junk. Keeping of junk is the code. Some of the descriptions are unused or broken machinery, appliances, furniture, construction materials. If you have that on your property in the city, it's got to be in a shed, in a garage, behind a fence out of view. So anyway, those are some of the challenges. Another are bushes, trees. There is an ordinance, you know, it can't block stop signs or the sidewalk. And people are really good about trimming them after I talk to them. What I will say is I don't do animal control, thank goodness. Chickens, cats, dogs, I refer them to our animal control department, which does a great job. Success. I guess the successes I see, I feel is anytime anybody gets in compliance with what I'm dealing with. That's the whole goal. With the mayor's help, we'll go over how you can review any code. So we go to the city's website, over on the left, documents, and then down to municipal code. And then you can search. Let's search weeds. And then it pulls up the different codes that refer to weeds. So if you have a neighbor or someone, or maybe you're worried about yourself, I mean, I'm out pulling a little weed this big now that I'm a code enforcement guy. But you can feel free to look at that, and then feel free to give me a call.
Kevin, can we talk real quick about weeds and when someone's elderly or needs assistance as far as being able to pull their weeds in Region 10 and that situation?
Okay, yeah, we do have Region 10 has some help for these people. And I've come into a couple of those. I gave them a little extra time and worked with them. I had the Boys Club willing to come in and help the individual. He didn't really want a bunch of kids on his property, so I guess I can understand that. But we do the best we can. You know, the goal is, again, just compliance, and I'm not getting any younger either. So, you know, I understand understand, and so we work with that. But keep in mind, there's a difference between what patrol does criminal and what I do in the codes. So there's a lot of things they can only do that I can't, so. But
That partnership with Region 10, I just want to come back to that and really highlight what a great job the PD did, because that actually started out of an unfortunate circumstance where an elderly woman was confronted by Montrose PD over her weeds, and it didn't go very well. It was a bad situation all around. And so I think to Chief Hall's credit, the PD looked at ways that instead of showing up and really confronting someone who wasn't able to take care of their weeds, that they looked for a solution. And so the PD's partnered with Region 10 and the Area Agency on Aging Division of Region 10 to try and help someone who really is in no position to help themselves with their weeds. And I think that really has turned out to be a good program. You guys are still doing that, it sounds like.
We do. I think sometimes they have a hard time finding volunteers. And that just seems to be kind of the way of the world these days. Kevin was talking about a seasonal, finding employees, but even finding volunteers sometimes just to fulfill those needs is difficult. And I know they really partner with some of the churches locally, and that seems to be something that's going okay.
Let's show folks that Better Montrose app, because I think that's one of the best ways to let you know that someone is seeing a problem. And I think it's just 1 minute long, and it's really the best way to explain the app.
Hi, this is Ross Valdez with the City of Montrose with an important community reminder. The Better Montrose app is the fastest way to report issues in our beautiful city and stay up to date on city events, holidays and closures, and from potholes to streetlights that may have gone dark, the Better Montrose app is a way for residents to make reports to the city's Public Works Department. Winter and spring are prime seasons for potholes. Ice and cold temperatures can cause potholes in city streets. By using the Better Montrose app to contact Public Works, you are making sure personnel within our streets division are aware of any potholes that may form during the cold winter months. You can find the app through the App Store on your iPhone and Google Play Store on your Android device by searching for a Better Montrose app. We hope you find the Better Montrose app a valuable resource to connect with your city, to report any issues you see, to make Montrose a wonderful place to call home.
I will say that we're working on trying to get it to decipher what department it needs to go to. And if you don't see anything that quite matches what you're looking for, just grab one, they review it, like graffiti. I get those, but if it's graffiti in one of our parks or one of our bike paths, then I can reassign that to Public Works, or they'll get something and they reassign it to me. So, but it works, and I normally put a comment, or I can receive comments once I open that case. So anyway, it's a good tool. So.
I have a question for both of you, so if Rick wants to come back up. Are you both officers? Do you dress like a police officer when you knock on someone's door? Are you armed? I don't know the answer to that question.
Neither one of us are armed or dressed like an officer. Matter of fact, I just got debadged recently. Used to wear a badge, but trying to tone things down a bit after some recent shooting type stuff out in the county. So more of an officer safety issue, kind of a soft hands approach.
Yeah,
I think Kevin would probably agree with doing it that way.
I think even since I started, hopefully it's not because of my age, but they took me away from vagrants as much. Patrol does that. I think, yeah, this is what I wear. I'll do radio. They offered me mace into that, but I think I've had 3 times I've had to call for backup. But anyway, guys get a little irate. But anyway, it's cool. Those days are long gone for this guy. So. Any other questions?
Questions?
Is there any overlap with county ordinances and city codes and even HOA rules in terms of some of these definitions of what you can do or not do with all the things that you guys have been talking about? Is, if you're in the city, does the county rules work independently of the city rules, or can there be overlap, and if so, does one have hierarchy over the other?
Well, you know, the city is in the county, obviously, but I think it's jurisdictional, so it would be, you know, if it's in the city limits, it would be mine, or we would deal with it. As far as HOAs, that's an interesting topic. So right about the time I started, I guess a new law passed, and so the HOA lost their control over parking on the street, and they can still regulate on the property or whatever. So, you know, if the HOA is upset that somebody has their new pickup parked out on the street, they really can't do anything about it. If they're licensed, operable, and doesn't sit there for more than 30 days, they have no control. That's mine.
Pretty much covers it. Yeah, we occasionally get calls from HOA presidents, typically over the years. I have myself. And they're just trying to run some issues by us and get our input and stuff. But ultimately, it's the HOA stuff standalone, separate from the actual municipal or county ordinances.
Mine is more of a comment than a question. Looking at what you guys have been saying, what jumps out at me is leverage. You got two guys on all these ordinances. It's not enough. I don't see how you can get this stuff done. So that seems to be a real concern to a lot of people saying, man, we just need more people. I think the other one was just looking at these websites. People aren't going to look at these websites and look at the ordinances. We should be leveraging what we're trying to do in this city through our media. I mean, why aren't we going to Montrose Press and whatever else we have and saying, okay, folks, here's what we're trying to do to make Montrose better. Here's the kind of things we need to worry about, and you can almost attack one of these ordinances one thing at a time. Okay. And I think the third thing is. You talked about weeds and having people, help this lady who couldn't do it. You got the same thing with junk. There's probably 5 or 6 different reasons why all this junk is piling up. It could be because they're physically unable to move the stuff out. They can't afford to take it to a junkyard. They don't know where the junkyard is. And are we really leveraging with like junk haulers to say, okay, you can haul this stuff off, 50% of the junk salvage value can go to the hauler, 50% of the owner. Start leveraging some of these concepts to make stuff happen. Otherwise, you're going to stay right where we're at for the rest of for forever. To me, the biggest problem we have in Montrose County is junk by far, and it really degrades what's going on in this area. It's horrible. So. Anyway, let's start leveraging a little bit more, guys.
Appreciate that. Just to let you know, there was the newsletter the city sent out, the last one, had a section on weeds and parking. Back last year, we did a social media about the signs. So we tried. I appreciate your comments.
Well, I live over in Stanford Lane, and we have a town within the city limits, and it's a prairie dog town. Now, that vacant lot that is over there on Miami and Hillcrest is loaded with prairie dogs. It's starting to get underneath the fences into our backyards. And I've called animal control 3 different times. He's always going to get back to me. I never hear from him. The owner of this property, who is well known with the city planning, lives in California, and the only advantage in prairie dogs right now are keeping the weeds down a little bit. But now they're starting to move across the street over in Pennsylvania and moving towards the cemetery, and the weeds are fairly high over in that area, and it's always a problem to get this guy to take care of either the prairie dogs and the weeds because he lives out of state. Now, I don't know what you guys can do about it, but I have a contact in California that I'll give to you, and you can contact him whether it does any good or not. I don't know.
Yeah, get that to me, I'll talk to him.
Let me remind you, we're gonna try and focus on questions that these guys who have come here this morning can help. So I'm sure we all have an example of a weed we know about or a sign that bugs us, but let's focus on questions that might be interesting to everybody today.
I have an easement that goes through the house at yard which is quite large. What are my responsibility in that easement for weed control and flood control and mud coming out of it to other places?
So, the property owner is required to keep, like, a property that, on the street, they have to take care of the weeds, that's between the sidewalk and the curb. So, and again, a lot of people think, well, I just mow my lawn up to the sidewalk and that's all I have to worry about, but it's easements on the,
I think they're doing construction out there, that's all.
so anyway, does that answer?
Between properties.
Yeah,
Yeah. What's that?
Turn, yeah, use the mic.
Do you have an HOA? Have you discussed that with the president or the board?
No, I haven't.
It might be,
Are the weed control
it's hard to say now.
The easement's on your property, then it is your responsibility. Okay, got a question back here.
I'd like to know the purpose, the public benefit for all these rules and regulations. In general, you've got all these rules that are telling people what to do. What's the point?
I would say health, safety, welfare of the community. They were put on the books many years ago, and they seem to work quite well. It's what a lot of people want. People don't want tall weeds on their neighbors' yards or abandoned vehicles laying out on the street for months on end, things like that.
So there is a public benefit for the community for what you guys do. And if an individual doesn't want to comply or thinks that his property rights are more important than the community, what do?
We try our best to work with that individual. Ultimately, they have to comply at some point. That's what the courts are for, to determine.
And in these guys' defense, although I think your point might be that as a society, these are ordinances that we've created by the leaders we've elected. I mean, that's one of the things, being mayor is it sounds really important. I don't really have a lot of power, except that the 5 city councilors that you all who live in the city elect, we create ordinances. These guys didn't come up with these rules. The folks you all elected to be county commissioner or city councilors are the ones who come up with these rules, who revise them, who update them. So they should, in that way, reflect what our community wants. So I think that's a great question, and I think health, safety, welfare, and then a reminder of where these rules come from. I think there's a question over here.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, what is your favorite or most interesting ordinance to enforce?
Use the mic. Use the mic.
wow. Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. I'll get back to you on that.
That's a fair answer.
I think they're all about the same. Right now, weeds is down the list just because there've been so many. But, at least I get to talk to somebody, get out of the office. I guess maybe I like abandoned vehicles. They're eyesore. I guess back to you. It's a shame. I've thought of this. it's a shame the city has to pay a guy like me, thank goodness I do, but to handle these things that a property owner should do on their own. But, you know, a vehicle with 3 flat tires and a piece of junk that has been there forever that I just finally found, I'm glad to get rid of it. What's yours?
Yeah, favorite, that's a tough one. Actually, serving papers I kind of enjoy. You get to go out and meet a lot of people. I mean, it's kind of, there's some sad stories out there that I won't tell, but hear a lot of stuff like that. But all in all, it's not too bad of a part of the job. I definitely don't miss the weed violations. You're the weed Nazi now, huh?
I have not looked this up, but I do notice in our city that there is a lot more solicitation on corners. And so I'm wondering if there is an ordinance at all on loitering in city property or public property or solicitation.
It looks like Chief Hall has a good answer on that, and I know our city attorney would if they were here, but we're making William move the camera back and forth a lot.
So that's a really good question, and maybe that's a good forum topic someday. Not only solicitation on street corners, but transients. I'm sure you've all seen the increase in transients, and you might all be curious about how we try to manage that situation. But specifically to your question, there is not an ordinance. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The United States Supreme Court has made it very clear that if someone is in the public right-of-way and they are not causing a safety issue, so like let's say, it's been years ago, the firefighters used to do the stuff the boot drive, so they would stand in the middle of the median and they would lean over, people would stop their cars, they would put, every chance I get to kind of, firefighters, but I love Tad. But it would back traffic up, right? And I don't think this ever happened, but there was always the possibility of having a rear end collision. So Colorado Supreme Court has said that if it is causing a traffic safety issue, then that's something that we can address. You need to know, though, that as a city and as a police department, we are very, very careful with how we address somebody soliciting, somebody holding a sign up, somebody walking, sitting on a park bench, because that gets into their constitutional rights. And it is a very difficult subject oftentimes to tackle. So we get calls on that all the time. Hey, this person, transient, side of the road, holding up a sign, and I want something done about it. City Market, great example, okay? Well, when they're on the sidewalk, they're on public property. When they are on the grass, guess whose property that is? That's City Market's property, okay? That's up to City Market to decide if they want to allow that or not. And I think oftentimes a lot of these places have taken the same stance that we have. We have to be very, very cautious about how we handle that situation. But in answer to your question, no, there is not an ordinance. We could not pass an ordinance.
Other questions? We got a few more minutes. Here we go.
Long-term use of private property to store abandoned vehicles or just cars. I live at 6530 Road, there's a number of subdivision tracts out there. Strict code enforcement on those, but there's an acreage there, and it's been over 15 years since I lived there, same cars, same place. Is there any code about that, or is that the property owner's right to collect those?
Sounds like, is that city or county? Look at them trying to figure that address out. City or county?
City.
It'd be in the city.
Well,
So that's,
is this right before Deer Trail subdivision on the west side of the road?
Yes.
That's actually county ag property. P6M.
so
Yeah,
there are no
that's
rules
correct.
for county ag property when it comes to junk.
Correct, prior junkyard when I was a
Drakes.
child. Yeah, it's the old Drake's junkyard. Now it's a private individual. He's a private collector. Yeah, I'm quite familiar with the property.
So sometimes your hands, I kind of hear you saying is sometimes your hands are tied. You may agree with him that that is an eyesore, but it doesn't break any rules, and there's even the current junk, the county I know is working on their junk ordinances, and ag property would be exempt from those rules.
Correct.
Okay, other questions?
I'm just wondering, I think we all that drive on US 50 know about that eyesore former motel restaurant near Cimarron. What, if anything, could ever be done about that?
Yeah, that's another one. Ag property, believe it or not.
Really?
It's about 3.5 acres. How it was ever a restaurant, gas station, on ag property is beyond me, but that was long before any of our time, so.
Used to be a good restaurant.
That's what PB was saying. It used to be a great place to go once upon a time. Any other questions? Okay.
What are the guidelines as far as finding RVs on railroad property in the city?
So the city has worked out a deal with the railroads that's trespassing, so patrol contacts them. Right now, there's a couple old camps that are along railroad property. We're allowed to do the trespassing issue, but that's private property. We're not allowed to clean it up. So I actually reached out to Union Pacific about a week and a half ago, and they put in a work order to clean up between North 4th and North 9th along the tracks. Last year I had to reach out to them about the weeds, the whole length of the tracks. But anyway, we can do, the patrol can, I can't, trespassing.
And Chief Ho wants to elaborate on cleaning up for vagrant camps.
So, just real quick, because that kind of leads into, that portion of it. We chase those RVs all over the city, honestly.
The blue one?
The blue one. No, yeah, specifically the blue one. And I gotta tell you, and I've told my guys, if there's anything you can find on the blue one where we can finally tow it, it's mine. The blue one, yeah, they all drive me crazy too, but we do. But the city goes through a huge process for transient camp cleanup. I don't know if you remember, it's been probably almost 8 years ago now. The Grand Junction Police Department moved into a transient camp area, and there were some very unscrupulous officers that took razor blades and knives and they cut all the tents. They took emotionally personal property, like pictures and things like that, threw them in the river. Okay, it was terrible, right? So that case and that lawsuit went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court put out a ruling, which kind of started this whole thing as far as transient camp cleanup, law enforcement contacting individuals who are transient. A lot of these individuals don't want help. This is their chosen way of lifestyle. And so when we have a camp like this, we've worked it out with our city attorney's office. The first thing that we have to do, not unlike what Kevin does, is we notice them. So we have a specific flyer and we put it all over the camp. We put it in the tent, on the tent, we nail it to the tree, we put a couple of them on the ground, and it basically gives them notice that in 72 hours, the camp will be cleaned up. This is on public property only. The city of Montrose does not clean up transient camps on private property. Sometimes we have business owners that call us up and say, hey, we've got this camp, we need you to come out and clean it up. We don't use our resources to do that. These are very time-intensive and manpower-intensive resources when we have to clean up a camp. So we notice them first. We give them 72 hours. That usually doesn't work. And so we come back in 72 hours. If the person is there, we will work with them, remind them of the notice, usually give them another day. In the meantime, the police department has met with Jim Scheid, our public works manager, and we do cleanup operations. And it's not just one. We usually have 4 or 5 different camps that we know about, that we've done this. And then the next day, or the day after, it's usually coordination again of manpower and resources. We will move in, and we have to sort with gloves through all of this stuff. You can imagine what we find, and really the dangers that we face and that our public works folks face when we have to pick out emotionally valuable property. We save it, and then everything else goes in the trash. Here about 1.5 years ago, Jim Scheid's crew cleaned up 5.5 tons of junk in all of our parks around the city of Montrose. It was incredible. And so we take all that emotionally valuable property and we put it in a Connex container at Public Works. We store it for 30 days. And so if that person wants their picture album, their photographs, their jewelry, anything that's valuable or emotionally valuable, we tag it, we put it in a bag, and then they can come get their property. So it may seem easy in the minds of most of our folks that we should just get in there and clean things up, but there's always a process that we have to follow to get these things done, and it's usually pretty time intensive. So, thank you.
I think that was maybe a good note to end on, that it really is a collaboration between the police department, the public works department,